Samurai Showdown was one of the most iconic fighting game series in the 90s. It had a unique emphasis on defensive actions, counterattacks, use of weapons, impressive pixel art, and its setting in feudal Japan. I am a huge fan of the series, and while I wouldn't call it one of my favorites, I will say that I do appreciate the fact that it did try to stand out and be unique in a time when many games were just trying to be Street Fighter II clones. This uniqueness stands out even more when you consider the fact that the game was originally released on the Neo Geo, which was one of the main culprits for releasing nothing but clones at the time. As a kid growing up, I wasn't a huge fan of Japanese RPGs, but I did have some intrigue when I found out that there was one made for Samurai Showdown. Unfortunately for me, RPGs are a very text-heavy genre and the game was not released outside of Japan. After years, no, decades of waiting, I'm happy to say that a fan translation in English has finally been made available, but it is unfortunately only for the original Neo Geo CD version. For those of you that are looking to play the PlayStation 1 or Sega Saturn versions, unfortunately you will have to wait a bit longer. To sweeten the deal even more, after the long wait, not only can you play the game in English, but the patch also includes some quality of life improvements. It was recently released by Jeff Nussbaum, and I'm going to be able to let you know in just a minute what it's like to play this long-awaited game. But before I do that, I just want to quickly remind you that you can help support us over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. By supporting us over at Patreon, you're going to help out both this channel, I Dream of Retro Games, as well as the main channel over at I Dream of Indie Games. And depending on how much you're willing to afford to be able to help us out, there are many different tiers that you can pick from that give you all different kinds of perks. Again, that's patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. And now back to Samurai Showdown RPG. So while I may have referred to it as Samurai Showdown RPG, that's not the actual title for the game. In Japan, the Samurai Showdown series is known as Samurai Spirits, and the RPG entry was originally released in Japan in 1997 for the Neo Geo CD. It was released under the title Shinsetsu Samurai Spirits Bushido Retsuden, and the new localized title in the translation gives it the name Samurai Showdown Tales of the Bushido. So I think it's a bit obvious why fans in the West would want to give it a simpler title and call it just Samurai Showdown RPG. When starting out, you can first select a character to be your protagonist, and you have 6 characters to choose from. Your choices are Yukio Tachibana, Nakuru, Hamaru, General Kabami, Cham Cham, and Galford. After selecting your protagonist, there are 2 story scenarios that you're given the option to play, and they tell the story of the first 2 games in the series. The first of these scenarios is called Descent of Dark Skies, and it covers the story from the first Samurai Showdown, where Amakusa returns to life. He brings with him forces from hell to wreak havoc and bring chaos to Japan. The second one is called Lament of the Pale Blooms, where a creature named Mizuki has emerged from hell and seeks to remake the world in hell's image. Another choice that you have to make when starting out is which of the 2 modes that you want the combat system to be in. Versus input mode will require you to input the directional and button commands from the fighting games after selecting a special move to perform it. With menu select mode, you're going to perform the special moves with a menu selection just like you would in most turn-based RPGs. Having the options are nice because it makes it so that if somebody wants to be able to keep it a more traditional RPG experience, they can do that, but gamers like me who want to keep things a bit more exciting and closer to the fighting game experience have that option as well. Early in each scenario, you will be prompted to go into a tavern to find warriors to join your party. There will be a few to choose from, and the selections will be different depending on which protagonist that you chose. Some of the available party members will be other choices that you could have made as a protagonist, and some of them are characters from the series that can only be recruited as party members. While the party limit is 4 characters, you won't be able to recruit 3 party members this way. This is because there are empty slots that are left for other characters who will join your party temporarily during certain parts of the story or during a boss battle. One of the first things that you'll notice when venturing into the overworld map is that this game has random encounters, and the encounter rate is very high. In fact, I think this is one of the highest encounter rates that I have ever experienced in any RPG. While this didn't bother me personally because the combat was fun and I definitely appreciated having the experience points, item drops, and money from the battles to help me get strong quickly, players of a different temperament might be put off by this. However, there is a patch available that will lower the encounter rate if you find this to be too frustrating. Towns will have businesses where you can obtain goods and services to help you on your journey. General stores will have consumable items that will provide you healing and cure status effects, magic shops for special moves, armor and weapon shops are self-explanatory, blacksmiths will upgrade your weapons, and inns will recover your HP and SP, which is for your special moves. There is a limit to how many times you can upgrade your weapon during a certain part of the story, but if you upgrade your weapon to the maximum and gain a few levels in each story section, then you shouldn't have any problems with the dungeons and bosses. Another aspect to the blacksmith's upgrades is that they can assign an element to your weapons. This is important because an elemental attack that hits an enemy weakness will do a great deal of bonus damage. There's also no penalty when attacking an enemy that's of the same element or even resists it, you just do normal damage in that case. So with no downside, I definitely recommend doing it whenever you can, and you can also change that element on the weapon if you desire. Some towns will also have theaters, temples, and castles that may play a part in quests, and it's generally a good idea to talk to all the NPCs to get information on side quests. More of the world will open up for you to explore when you gain access to ports through story progression, and you obtain passes that will allow you to travel through guarded gates between regions. The story is linear, and it will direct you to where you need to be at the time, but there will be some benefit to returning to previous areas for optional content that I won't spoil here. Even with the linear structure, there are a few optional areas that can reward your exploration. The overworld is split into sections between gates, and the sections are relatively small. This actually works well here because with the extremely high encounter rate, it could be easy to lose track of where you're going if it were in a large area because of all these interruptions to your exploration. Dungeons are fairly simple, and once a boss is defeated, the dungeon will be cleared. This means that you will no longer have random encounters in that area, so it'll be much easier to search the dungeon for items. As I previously touched upon, the combat system itself is very fun and engaging. The screen will focus either on your party or the enemy party, and members of both parties will only be seen together when the action is taken. The battle theme is in a traditional Japanese style with a ritualistic feel that gives the battle a similar vibe to the fighting games in the series. There is also a time limit for turns in the combat, so you will lose your turn if you take too long to make a decision. The battle menu does give you a bunch of icons to show you all the various options that you have to do in the battle, and there's more than you may be used to. Not surprisingly, the game does offer your standard and special attacks as well as defending and running from the battle, but some other things that you might not be used to are being able to threaten the enemy to potentially scare them away, change to an auto battle mode that will command your party to use standard attacks till the fight comes to an end, or to change the party formation. Special attacks will consume your SP, and while those might seem like a scarce resource early on, items to refill those points are affordable, and both your HP and SP will be fully replenished whenever a character gains a level. After you get over that initial hump, you'll get into a groove once you've gained a few levels where you will gain a level before you even run out of SP, and you won't have to use items to refill it all that frequently. The POW meter is also present here, and it will greatly boost your special attacks when it's full. The pixel art is well done, though it is a bit less detailed than the other games in the series due to it using smaller images. The depictions of the environments that you will traverse, paired with the accompanying music, do a great job of creating a world based upon feudal Japan that is interesting to explore, though those frequent battle encounters will make the exploration aspect feel like it comes in small doses. Fortunately, those battles are where this game visually shines, so you will regularly be treated to a feast for the eyes with all the great character designs. Your enemies will come in the form of various types of creatures, including wild animals, humans, the undead, demons, and strange monsters. Part of what makes the battles interesting is seeing what kind of enemy that you're going to be up against next. Getting to see the special moves from both your party and the enemies is also fun, and when a powerful attack finishes off an enemy, it may result in the foe being sliced in half just like in the fighting games. As for the quality of life features that were added with this translation, these consist of fixing some bugs, improving the potency of items that permanently boost stats and lower the encounter rate, and adding an alternate color palette for each of the protagonist's appearance. Another note for those of you that like to frequently save while playing your RPGs, there are only 2 save slots available total, so choose wisely when saving. Overall, Samurai Showdown Tales of the Bushido will be a fun and satisfying experience for fans of the series who want to play as the characters in an RPG. It manages to capture some of the feeling of the games that fans know and love, while also providing an engaging turn-based RPG experience. While the story and dialogue do feel closer to a story mode in a fighting game than one would expect from a JRPG, this simple presentation isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it might come across as less interesting to those who aren't familiar with the characters already. Rather than portraying character development as the story progresses, This focuses more on characters with pre-established personalities reacting to the events in the stories. So while you don't need to have played the other games in the series to enjoy this, you will have a better experience if you already have some knowledge of and interest in the characters. I had a blast with this game, and I'd recommend it to both fans of the series as well as those who are interested in playing a retro JRPG with more of an emphasis on combat than the narrative. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and to become a member of our Patreon at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, where you can get great perks to help us continue to provide you with indie and retro game coverage.